The Pacific waters off the coast of Monterey Bay shimmered like liquid diamonds under the early morning sun. Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood at the bow of her research vessel, the soft spray of salt water kissing her weathered face as she scanned the horizon. 23 years of studying marine mammals had taught her to read the ocean's subtle messages. And today, something felt different. The way the water moved, the unusual pattern of seabird activity. Nature was trying to tell her something. "Dr. Mitchell," Tom Henderson's voice carried across the deck, competing with the cry of circling gulls. "You need to see this." The veteran fisherman's normally steady voice carried an edge of urgency that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. Through her binoculars, she spotted it, a massive dark shape moving awkwardly through the water. The humpback whale's normally graceful movements were replaced by something that made her stomach clench. As the magnificent creature breached the surface, Sarah's trained eye immediately noticed the abnormal texture of its skin. Where there should have been smooth, dark flesh, there was instead a grotesque mosaic of countless barnacles, their white shells creating a ghostly armor that was slowly killing the gentle giant. "Dear God," she whispered, her breath catching in her throat. In all her years of research, she had never seen such a severe case of barnacle infestation. The whale's every movement seemed to require tremendous effort, its once powerful flukes struggling against the weight of thousands of unwanted passengers. Tom maneuvered their vessel, the Ocean's Promise, closer to the distressed whale. The morning fog was beginning to lift, revealing more details of their gentle giant's predicament. Sarah could now see how the barnacles had colonized nearly every accessible inch of the whale's body, creating a prison of calcium carbonate that was slowly but surely restricting its movement. "We need to call this in," Sarah said, already reaching for her satellite phone. Her fingers flew across the keypad, muscle memory taking over as she dialed the Marine Mammal Rescue Center. "This is Dr. Sarah Mitchell with the Monterey Bay Marine Research Institute. We have a Code 3 situation. Adult humpback, severe barnacle infestation, showing signs of extreme distress." As she spoke, her mind was already racing through possibilities, calculating risks, and forming plans. The whale's labored breathing and irregular surfacing pattern suggested it was already dangerously weakened. They didn't have the luxury of time. Within 30 minutes, the quiet morning transformed into a hub of focused activity. Dr. James Jake Rodriguez, the head veterinarian from the Marine Mammal Rescue Center, arrived with his team aboard their specialized rescue vessel. The sleek boat cut through the waves, equipped with state-of-the-art medical equipment and tools, designed specifically for large marine mammal rescue operations. "What's the situation, Sarah?" Jake called out as soon as his boat was within speaking distance. His dark eyes were already fixed on the whale, assessing and analyzing. "Adult humpback, approximately 45 feet in length," Sarah reported, her voice clipped and professional despite the emotion churning in her gut. "Extreme barnacle infestation covering an estimated 70% of visible surface area. Breathing pattern is irregular, surfacing every 3 to 4 minutes instead of the typical 7 to 15-minute intervals." Jake nodded grimly. "We're going to need more hands on deck. Has anyone contacted the Coast Guard?" "Already done," Tom interjected, lowering his binoculars. "They're sending a vessel to help maintain a safety perimeter. We've also got 3 local fishing boats standing by to assist." The next few hours were a blur of activity as more help arrived. The local news had caught wind of the situation, and soon the story of the struggling whale began spreading across social media. Sarah barely noticed the gathering crowd on the shoreline, her focus entirely on the massive creature before them. The Coast Guard vessel arrived with a low thunder of engines, establishing a protective perimeter around the rescue zone. Lieutenant Maria Ramirez, her uniform crisp despite the salt spray, coordinated with local boats to keep curious onlookers at a safe distance. The whale's distress had drawn a flotilla of well-meaning observers, their presence both heartening and potentially dangerous to the rescue operation. Jake and Sarah huddled over the rescue vessel's navigation screen, plotting the safest approach. The whale's erratic movements made traditional rescue protocols challenging. "We need to get divers in the water," Jake said, his fingers tracing potential entry points on the display. But with those barnacles, every movement could be unpredictable. One swipe of that tail in panic. He didn't need to finish the thought. Sarah had seen the damage a frightened whale could do, even unintentionally. "What about using sound?" she suggested, remembering a technique she'd developed during her postdoctoral research. "We could try broadcasting specific frequencies, ones that typically calm humpbacks during migration." Tom, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "I've got the underwater speakers from last month's behavioral study still aboard. They're rated for deep water use." Sarah felt a spark of hope. "Perfect. Jake, if we can keep the whale calm, your team might have a better chance of getting close enough to begin removal." The next 30 minutes were spent preparing the underwater acoustic system. Dr. Lisa Chen, a marine acoustics specialist who had been monitoring the situation from shore, arrived with additional equipment. Her expertise would be crucial in fine-tuning the frequencies to achieve maximum calming effect. "The recordings need to match the whale's current vocal patterns," Lisa explained as she set up her equipment. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, adjusting wavelengths with practiced precision. Too different, and it might add to the stress rather than reduce it. Sarah watched the whale through her binoculars, noting how it listed slightly to its port side. The barnacles had created an uneven weight distribution, forcing the massive creature to expend extra energy just to maintain its position in the high water. Time was working against them. Every minute of struggle depleted the whale's precious energy reserves. The first underwater playback test sent gentle vibrations through the hull of their boat. To the human ear, it was barely perceptible, a deep melodious rumble that seemed to emerge from the ocean itself. But the effect on the whale was immediate and visible. Its frantic movement slowed, and its breathing pattern shifted closer to normal parameters. "It's working," Sarah breathed, hardly daring to speak above a whisper. "Look at the blowhole pattern, it's evening out." Jake was already mobilizing his dive team. "We've got a window, let's make it count." The rescue, divers led by veteran marine mammal specialist Alex Thompson, began their final equipment checks. Each diver carried specialized tools designed to remove barnacles, while minimizing trauma to the whale's sensitive skin. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, burning away the last wisps of morning fog. The water had taken on a crystalline clarity that would aid the diving operation, but Sarah knew it also meant rising temperatures that could further stress their patient. They needed to work fast. Alex's team slipped into the water with barely a splash, their movements smooth and practiced. Sarah held her breath as she watched them approach the whale, their bodies tiny in comparison to the massive creature they were trying to save. The underwater speakers continued their calming broadcast, creating an almost surreal atmosphere of suspended time. Through the drone of boats and the cry of seabirds, Sarah heard Tom mutter a quiet prayer. She understood the impulse. In moments like these, science and faith often intertwined, both reaching for hope in the face of nature's overwhelming challenges. The fate of this magnificent creature now rested in human hands, a responsibility that weighed heavily on everyone involved in the rescue. The first diver reached the whale's flank, moving with exquisite slowness to avoid triggering any panic response. Through the clear water, Sarah could see the true extent of the barnacle invasion. Thousands of the crustaceans had created a living armor that was slowly suffocating the whale's natural movement. Each cluster would need to be removed with painstaking care to prevent injury to the underlying skin. "Beginning removal at Section 1. Alex's voice crackled through the radio. "Barnacle density is unprecedented. We're going to need more collection bags than we anticipated." Jake grabbed the radio. "Understood. We've got additional supplies coming in from Moss Landing. How's the whale responding to contact?" There was a moment of tense silence before Alex replied, "Surprisingly well. Whatever you're doing with those sound patterns, keep it up. The big guy's holding steady.